Hi, in this video, we are going to see how we can easily set up one MCP server, which can be used to set up your Google Calendar meetings in a very simple workflow where you give in text prompt as input either to your Codex or either to your Cloud desktop application, and it will be able to set up your meeting all automatically. So for that, we'll be going through the steps how I was able to set it up, and this repository is open for anyone to use and set up as and when required. So let's get started. So in the repo, as we see, automation script for creating Google Calendar meetings with minimal input. So we have some prerequisites. So to set this repository, we need to create a content environment, need to activate and install the requirements that can be also found in the requirements.txt file. Once that is done, you go to Google console where you have to enable the API for Google Calendar so that we can easily create any new meeting invite, and also need to create credentials. So steps are mentioned over here. You go to this particular section in the GCP console, you navigate to API services, credential, and create OAuth client ID of desktop type. And then once that is done, you would be able to download a JSON file that can be renamed to credentials.json, which is internally authenticating from where the API request is getting created for authentication purposes. And then once that is done, when we would be like first running the script, it would automatically also create token.json. Once you have once you like start the script, you will get a prompt in the browser to accept the access to calendars, and it would create a tokens.json file. So those two JSON files are essentially required while running the script. So the usage of script is something like this. So if we want to independently create any meeting invite just using the Python script, so this is the way to do that, where we insert the meeting time, the other person email ID, and the meeting title along with the notes. So notes could be anything, anything such as maybe LinkedIn URL or any website URL or anything like that can be given. So these two options are required, and other ones are optional with some default values as mentioned over here. So this is the normal Python usage. But now let's say we want to create like a MCP server out of this Pythonic function. So this is the way to do that. So there is one additional file called mcp server.py that we can see over here, which utilizes this create meeting event function to create MCP server. And so the details is what we can find over here. We can also like independently run this MCP server to make it run. But in our case, our client could be anything. It could be a terminal, it could be Codex, or it could be even Cloud Desktop. So here we have specified how to configure it. So let's say if you want to run it with Codex. So Codex is basically OpenAI new assistant in terminal, AI assistant for terminal, where you can just give in commands and it will execute all automatically. But we have a way to integrate a MCP server into it, so that where we can call the event and it would call that MCP server all automatic. So that is what we have described in this section, how to set it up. So once we are done with the setup of Codex, then we have to write this command MCP Codex MCP add calendar meeting, and then we have to provide the Python path along with the MCP server py file path. So what it does, whenever the MCP request would be made, it would automatically spin up the server according to whatever is specified in this py file. And once we have like run this, we can also run this command in the new server to see if it is actually running or not. So this is how we can actually add that MCP server with Codex. And so once this thing is set up, after that we can just call like create a meeting invite at some particular meeting time and giving the other people email ID and the meeting title, and it would automatically create. So I'll show how the thing would be working. And another way of MCP client is to use Cloud Desktop. Again, Cloud Desktop has its own JSON configuration file where we can add this configuration, and it's again the simple Python command where we have specified the Pythonic path and the py file path. And once we have added it, and we need to restart Cloud Desktop, and in the chat interface we can just ask it to create meeting invite, and it will do the work for us. So before going to the actual demo, let's quickly go through these two py files. So this py file is for actually creating the Google Meet invite using the Google API. We have some default values over here, some arguments that we are passing. Some of them are default and some of them are required parameters, as we can see. Then there is some logic for parsing the time format and then getting the credentials from the JSON and the token file that was created while running this setup. And then we have a simple service where we like pass in all the arguments, and it calls Google API to execute and create the meeting invite. So basically this is simply that Python file for creating meeting, and we can run this file independently as well to create like a test meeting invite to see if it is working. So this is for creating the meeting invite. And now coming to the MCP server file. So it uses like fast MCP package which is provided in Python for creating the MCP server and MCP server tool. So this is the server that we created by the name of Google Calendar meeting, and we have added a tool, a create meeting invite, with following description. And this tool requires like some arguments to invoke the function that we have already seen. So these are like some of the parameters again, and in the chat interface from Cloud Desktop or maybe Codex, we would be calling this thing to create the meeting invite. So now let's maybe go ahead and see how we can invoke these functions maybe using Cloud Desktop or Codex. So first I would be maybe showing its usage using Cloud Desktop. So in my Cloud Desktop, I have already configured the MCP server to make the use of. So as we can see, calendar meeting is already there with the commands and all, which is already configured. So we can also click on edit config to see its configuration with VS Code or any other editor of the choice. So calendar meeting is over here, as we can see. This is how we enable Cloud Desktop to use the MCP server. Now coming back to the new chat, now let's try to create a new meeting. Create a new Google Meet invite with at 5 p.m. IST on coming Saturday. So the beauty of this is it automatically identify what is the date on Saturday, and you can just vaguely pass the information to the chat, and it will automatically pass that information to give to the MCP server as required. So with a very minimal thing, we can do all of these things. Meeting title, intro call, meeting notes also. Let's try to pass something. Let me pass my LinkedIn URL as a meeting notes. So ideally, it should automatically call the MCP server. So Claude is built in a way it automatically identify which MCP tool or server to use. As you can see, it is using the calendar meeting invite MCP server, and it has already created that. So it is saying like we have already created. Now let me show you the email which I have just received for this call. So this is the meeting invite which I just got 0 minutes ago. As you can see, it is intro call. We can see in the note section there is the LinkedIn URL that we passed. It is for 8 November, which is Saturday, 5 p.m. for 1 hour. So this is the way how we are able to set up the meeting. So this is one way of using it. There's like another way as well to use it. Maybe let me show you that as well. So another client that I've set for this MCP server is using Codex. So Codex is a very recently released tool by OpenAI, which is like a smart AI assistant. But now the MCP server I have already like integrated with this setup, as we have seen in the README file. So using this command. So now let's try set up meeting with at maybe 3 p.m. IST on coming Sunday. Topic would be data science. And duration also we can specify. Let's mark duration as 30 minutes this time. Notes, data, I think this is it. Let's see how it works. Just zoom in a bit. So it has automatically identified and using the MCP server, and we can see meeting already booked. Now let me again open my calendar invite to show you how it performed. So this is the new invite which I just got, data science, as we can see, and in the meeting notes you can see data science notes 3 p.m. Sunday. So it is now able to automatically create this invite all by itself. So similar way you can also configure your MCP agents with Cloud Desktop or any other MCP client, and it's very simple way. And internally it uses Python package such as MCP, and Google API we have used for creating meeting invites. So this is that easy now to create MCP servers of your own and use it with any MCP client of your choice. Thank you.